Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special episode of the Canoe Project for CAN, Communities, Alliances, and Networks. My name is Mike. In short, I work on the communications team for CAN. Today, we are going to be talking about harm reduction through a traditional Indigenous lens. I am joined by a very special guest, knowledge giver Betty McKenna. Say hi, Betty.
Hi.
And how long have you been a knowledge giver for?
I've been a recognized knowledge giver for 42 years, since I was 36 or so. I've traveled across Turtle Island and been to so many communities, and it's been a wonderful education to see how others live in community and how some of our ways are so similar and they're interconnected.
And I imagine that gives you a lot of experience in seeing addictions in our communities.
Well, yes, but I'm going to tell you this. Since humans stepped out on Mother Earth, there have been addictions. This isn't new. Our people have been dealing with it for millennia. We have plants here, right here, that have grown for thousands of years, and they're addictive. They have addictive qualities to them. And harm reduction would not be a new thing to our communities because it means building community, strong community. That's what harm reduction was all about. And through that, we had ceremony. And those ceremonies is what built the strength, the endurance, and the passion to overcome addictions. And that's what a person has to have within themselves to create that spirit of, I can do this.
So, would you say traditionally preventative care was most important in Indigenous harm reduction?
Definitely. That was the same idea behind using any of our medicines that we had when the healers came in, was for people to, it was prevention. Before you get sick, you take the medicine to prevent the illness. So in community, we had ceremony built around that whole idea of prevention and keeping people in a place that was safe and sacred. You don't start a fast when you're 40 years old. It's a long catch-up. It started when you were a little child as your first walking out ceremony. That's how young our prevention started. Once you left your mother's arms and your father's arms and was able to walk away from that tick noggin and no longer be carried, that's when it starts. That's the prevention that young. You build that spirit by community connections, strong community connections. Strong communities build strong people.
And how do you think these types of traditions could be implemented today?
You get people who are interested in being a part of community. And when you gather them together, the ancestors will answer when you ask, what do these people need? What's going to build community for them? And they're going to keep getting that community stronger and stronger and pulling more people in. And through that, you can still do walking out ceremonies when you're old. You can do it when you're 40, 41, 42. There's no age limit because your spirit is still that child. So feed that child, nurture that child, give that child good words, give that child a place for them to see themselves as a whole being and that there's nothing wrong with them. And they can get to where they need to without struggling for years and years and think they'll never get there. They can. They can. I've seen it happen. I've seen it with young women who go into the warrior societies, or the young men who go into the warrior societies, and they learn about themselves and their strengths, and they nurture their spirit.
So the idea of community seems to be very important to harm reduction through an Indigenous lens. Would you say that empathy, people caring for one another in like a tight-knit community is something that would prevent people from doing activities or substances that could harm their group or community?
Well, when we start talking about harm reduction, it's almost like what I hear people, they're jumping into the middle. Because in order for a person to become addicted, there has to be something that steers them down that path in the first place, and it's not an addiction. It's a hurt, it's a pain, it's a wound. And that's what they try cover it with, that addiction. No one is born saying, I want to be addicted. I want to, no one does that. Everybody has aspirations of what they want to be and where they want to go. And they should be free in that everyone should support them in whatever effort they want to do. But no one ever asks to be an addicted person. No one. So we have to start at the beginning, where they got wounded, and help them with that. Because an addicted person is a person who's carrying wounds that no one can see, that only they can feel.
And of course, getting to younger groups is pivotal for stopping any type of activities or behavior that could, hurt them or their community down the line. How would you implement some of these strategies for our community that's already aged? So some of our adult members of our communities, would you say that their experience, their lived experience with these addictions and these difficult times in their lives could be used as medicine itself for the youth? Could we engage them to become mentors in a way, so they become the next generation, if you will, of knowledge givers, as they have knowledge to give?
Exactly. I think when you put it in the hands of the older generation, I believe that they can be a healing for the younger ones, as they're starting to look at how young some of our children are starting to be addicted. And they look at that as the starting point, is when the children start using. And I know the ages have dropped significantly since I was like a teenager. But what happens is, if you can get those young people to hear the stories of the older ones, that medicine works both ways. It's a healing for the person who voices their traumas, the different things that they've gone through in life. And for the young, it's pointing a pathway for them to live a good life and make good choices for themselves. And when we bring back those ceremonies that the warriors would like to see implemented with young people, that's going to start a whole different line of healing for the young, so that they're not going to be in the position that we're in now, where they think harm reduction is give them a safe place for using the needles or whatever it is that they're doing. And that's all fine and good, but you got to start from the very start of where it begins. And it's those kids, it's the little ones. That's where the healing has to start.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that I always take with me when I go through a difficult time or tragedy, and I've been through a bit already in my short time, is whenever I go through it, I know in my heart that I will be there for somebody else in their time of need. And I think that's something that we can stress to the people going through this, is even though you have a great pain in your heart, you can be there for somebody else when they need it, because they do have a resilience that's powerful, and we need to instill that in our youth. As long as they're mindful of it and they understand the pain and their ability to get through it, then they can be there for others. And that's the empathy we need to teach our communities.
Exactly.
So ceremonies build community. That's another purpose for them. What ceremonies would you use to help build these communities?
Well, there's different nations have different ceremonies, but for my nation and the ceremonies that I conduct, we have the full moon ceremony, and that builds strength and community, because everyone is invited to come to the full moon ceremony. We have pipe ceremonies. We have the solstice ceremonies, where the sunrise ceremonies, I call it. People say solstice, but there's 4 of them. And people are invited to come into the up in the hills and wait for the sun to come up and take part in the ceremony. And that builds community. And we've also got feasts, and there's powwows and sweat lodges. And there's different types of sweat lodges. There's water ceremonies. There's brushing ceremonies, where your energy is recharged with either eagle wing, or some communities they use cedar branch. So there's so many that are used and they're all healing. They're all helping to keep you strong and resilient to the things that crop up in life.
Your ancestral sciences didn't just focus on physical ailments. You had advanced psychology and emotional healing as well.
Yes, but it didn't just stop there at emotional healing. There's also mental healing and spiritual healing. We have 4 things within us: physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional. And all 4 of those things require healing. Now, I want you to think of this word that we use, healing, as in a different context, and think of it as life. It's always going to be there. Healing is a constant, or a means to an end. You'll never get to the end of healing. As long as you're living and breathing, you should be healing. When you think of community as a forest of healers, that each one would have their different ways of helping people in their daily life, of healing physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. The most obvious that a person sees is the physical, and the one that stays hidden the most is the spiritual.
How would you say colonial policies have affected these systems? Do you think that they really try and treat the symptoms rather than getting to the root of the problem?
Well, yes, of course. And the other way that it has impacted our ways and means of healing is through language. And a lot of people have followed that whole, for instance, we're using the term healer, and that wasn't used in our language. We used the term patient, and that isn't used in our languages. There was no such thing as a healer or a patient.
It really creates a separation between
That's
those two
right.
people.
Yeah.
What do you think the role of traditional medicines are for reducing harm?
People say traditional medicines, but I'm going to just say the stand-up people. That's the way I used to hear them called. The plants, the trees, rocks. They're standing on Mother Earth. Even water stands on Mother Earth, you know. She holds that up for us. Rain can be a healer. Wind can be a healer. So how do you call it a medicine? How do you say traditional? It's been here forever. So what's been here forever? Are we saying the traditional sky? Are we saying the traditional wind? That's a term I think that we've had shoved down our throat, traditional. I think it's just our ways and means of healing. It's ours. Mm-hmm. Belongs to everyone.
I think the act of even just learning how to harvest those medicines is healing.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, reclaiming that knowledge.
Yes.
You've done that in the past. I know.
Yes,
you've taken people
on
medicine walks.
Medicine walks, and I've also had people who are under my guidance of gathering medicines. It's not something that I promote, like, you know, it's not well-known knowledge. You have to really have known me for a few years before I take you out somewhere.
What else could be used for healing?
Well, rocks, and I would say rocks and our plants are more, they're helpers that awaken the strengths within a person. And that's what I like to think of them as. When I go out and put my tobacco down, I ask for those ones that can do that for others, or that can help. And they're always there. Well, you've just seen coming up my walk, there's a lot of them sitting out there. They're brought by the thunderbirds, some of the most powerful ones. The rocks, stones. When the thunderbird comes and it goes over water and the lightning hits the water, it goes under the water and it will roll the bottom of the river or lake, and they turn into solid stone. And if you go out after and it's a clear bed of water, you can find those stones and you gather them up, and they have so much energy in them that just having them placed beside you will help you. Some of them have been used they help with body pain. If a person has, say, a broken leg or a broken arm or something like that, and they need that extra energy to heal, that those rocks bring that energy to a person that was placed there by that thunderbird.
I've heard of this before. Those rocks or stones are perfectly circular, right?
Yes, they're absolutely round. Yeah. I think they're helpers from Sky Lodge that are sent to help us, because we did come from the stars. And we still have Sky Lodge ancestors that come and will tell you the things that you need to know. Sometimes it doesn't really suit you, but you got to do it anyway. I wouldn't know how to say no to them.
Knowledge, legends, and stories have a lot of value for our people. Are there any stories that come to mind about either addictions, harm reduction, anything like that?
Well, there's that being, the story about that being, Nishuayas. It means two-bodied. And it was like he had the one body looked forward and one body was behind him. And you'd only see the one body at a time. But you'd know he wasn't from this world if you looked down at his feet. So what would happen is when he came into communities, he encouraged those people to become addicted to if they were using those plants for, sometimes they use them for pain. And those plants are still addicted that are out there. There's certain mushrooms and stuff that are addictive. So he would come into the communities and he would just appear, and usually at some happy function where everyone was together and people weren't really noticing, changes. And that's when he would come in. He'd just be there. There's this, the one time there was how it works in these days, they used to say that there was a tribe, and they were using, some of the young men were using some medicines, and they'd continued to use it, they had gotten to some problems with the hunting. And so that's what caused them to start using these medicines to make them forget the hurt. And every time it would come up, they would go use the medicine because they would remember that hurt, and they weren't doing the right thing to get rid of the hurt of that memory. And so that Nijwaas come into that community and started taking more and more of those young people towards that plant, to use that plant to get them. Then they became like they were lazy. They wouldn't go out, they wouldn't do anything, and they wanted to just, pretty soon they couldn't even stand, They weren't even interested in eating or anything, or with their families or doing anything. They were just, some of them were just wanted to lay around and roll around laughing to themselves, like they talked to themselves and stuff. And it scared the rest of the tribe. And then someone saw that two-bodied, that Nijwayas, and said, there's a two-bodied person in the tribe. And it took a long time for the grandmothers to gather the right things they needed to send him away and to help those young men be able to see straight and to think properly and get rid of that feeling that they had, and to make them feel better about themselves till they got back to being the hunters that they had always been. But in more modern times, there was a dance, and it was held in a hall, and there was a big window, and these young women, they were going outside, and it was, they called it moose milk in those days. It was homebrew, homemade stuff. And they were going out and they were getting drunk. They'd go out and they'd drink, and they'd come back and they're getting drunker and drunker. And this young woman, she was dancing away, and she was getting really crazy and throwing her skirt up in the air, because they had these big skirts. And this her friend was doing the same thing and encouraging all the other women to do the same. And all of a sudden, this Nijwayas jumped through the window, right through the window. It wasn't even open or anything. It was closed. It was a big window. In he came, and he grabbed those two women, and he danced with them in the middle and twirled them around, and he kissed one and he kissed the other, and he said, "I'm going to have you before the night's out." And they laughed and laughed. And the kids laying under the bench watching the adults dance, they were laying on a blanket underneath a bench. And they had got tired, and they looked down and they started to scream, because they saw the feet of that Nijwayas was not like our feet. It was like hooves. And all of a sudden, everybody stopped the dancing and everything and asking what was wrong with the kids, what was wrong. And they couldn't even speak. They were so terrified that they'd seen this Nijwayas. And he jumped right back through the window. And the woman said, "Where did that good-looking guy go?" Because they saw him as a really good-looking person. There was this so handsome man that was dancing with them. And he just disappeared just like that. They didn't know where he came from, didn't know where he was going. But So the dance all broke up and people went home. And those women went home and they continued to drink when they got home. The people that had the home brew went with them and they were drinking. And they had coal oil lamps in those days and they knocked it over. And they were, they were falling asleep. And when they fell asleep and knocked the lamp over, the house caught fire. And people were, when they realized the fire was on, they went and grabbed buckets of water to put it out. And they were running to the cabin with water buckets, and they had to break there was just a skim of ice on the water, and they broke it. And they tried to open the door and they couldn't. It was like somebody was holding the door closed. And they were throwing the water at the door anyway, but they couldn't get in. And then finally, when the people, they all went up in flames and passed away in that fire. And they said that when the fire died down and they did find them, they were, that girl that had said that Nijwai asked when she said he was such a good-looking man, and she was the one laying by the door, and that's why they couldn't open the door. She was preventing them from getting in. She fell by the door, I guess. And that was, they tell that story all the time about that Nijwai asked, the two-bodied being that came in, about addictions, because those women were addicted to that moose milk, that home brew they made, and they were getting other people, addicted to it. But so I guess that was the end of him coming to that community. They certainly, it was a sad thing, and they say he's still around. But people don't notice him, because you'll come in where it's really crowded, a lot of people. So I don't go to where there's a lot of big crowds. Try to stay away. Things like that. I don't want to see him. I don't want to see people be taken by him. Addictions have been around for a long time, and they'll be here for a long time as well, simply because there are more things now to get addicted to, and there's more people to be addicted, starting at a younger age. So the answer to how people can do anything is you have to create community. It's the one thing that's going to reduce the numbers of addicted people, because there is no substance and no programs that can replace community togetherness. When we look at the Western model of dealing with addictions, there isn't enough support. They run for so long, and then a person's left on their own. In community, you're never left alone. In community, there's always an ear. There's always a platform to have your voice heard, to be seen. There's always someone else that you can help along the way. You see, people carry this huge load, these wounds that you can't see, and they're not to be carried. They're to be left by the side of the path and be able to tread lightly throughout your life. And that's the way it had been for our people for many years, and they had addicted people back then too, And of course, when we're looking at traditional ways and means and knowing to how to do that, it's to be able to connect to your ancestors. And all of us have ancestors, no matter where you came from, no matter where you live. Your ancestors aren't somewhere inaccessible. They're as close to you as sunlight on your face. And they don't abandon you. They've always been there. They always will be. So people have to be invested in healthy communities. People have to be willing to do their part in healthy communities. It doesn't develop on its own. It's one person connecting with another and connecting with another and connecting with another. And that's what builds them till you've built a circle, a sacred circle around your community. And your community then will thrive. There was a teaching they used to have, I don't think it's taught much anymore, about the geese. And when you see the geese flying, you notice there's always a lead that's honking, and they'll all honk and follow that lead goose. And then you'll see that goose drop back at one point and another one take its place. And yet the other ones follow behind and it'll still honk, including the one that just dropped back. And that's the way it was in community to help with addictions when things were in a state of disarray. That one leader would step up. And when that leader was tired, it would drop back and another one would step up. And that's the way the people were taught, that there isn't one particular leader, that everyone has the ability to lead. In your way, you lead. You don't have to lead the way someone else does. You have your own mode of gathering people, your own way of inspiring people, your own way of leading people. And when you're tired, someone else will then take the lead. And we're not built in a hierarchical system. Our laws from the universe didn't put humans here to be hierarchical. That's why we sit in a circle, that everyone in that circle is valued. There's a value to each and every person, from the youngest to the oldest. And none is more valuable than the other. I know people always, make a big fuss about the older ones and use terms for them that really our people never had those kind of terms for older people. But the younger ones, the young children who could still see the ancestors, communities relied on them because they could still see into that other world. At a point in our lives, we don't see it anymore. It dissipates. And they step back from us, but never from the children. So to keep our communities healthy and well, we have to start with the children. And it's never too young to start giving them the proper message and to help them with the things that they fear in life, the things that they imagine can hurt them, or the things that they have encountered in their life, the hurts and the pains. We have to acknowledge it and move on. And that's how we deal with addictions. Through the ceremonies, community togetherness, and building community. And staying strong, knowing that that was passed on to us when we first stepped up from Mother Earth. That's a long time ago. And what do you think that's going to end? It never will, because those ancestors are strong in what they knew. They were strong in keeping communities built. But we have to pick it back up and start rebuilding again. Put those willow teachings together. Get those moon teachings. Get those strawberry teachings. Get those moose teachings, the bear teachings, the rock teachings, the water teachings. There's so much out there, so much that we can just pick up and use. And we don't have to pay for it. The ancestors don't charge you. It's just to open your heart, your spirit, your mind, and say, I'm ready. I'll do it for the next 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes can go to 10 minutes, 10 minutes to 20, 20 minutes for a whole day, a week, a month, a year. Before you know it, it's been decades. And you're still helping community, drawing the ones up and saying, I'll hold your hand, I'll sit beside you, I see you, I hear you. You're valuable because you were born.
So during your time up north, you had a lot of experiences with addictions. How did that affect you in and around the communities you were up in northern Manitoba, northern Saskatchewan? You know, it can affect anybody in this day and age, because being able to escape community is so easy now in more westernized societies. How did it affect people around you when you were younger?
Well, a lot of the younger people just followed suit with what they saw the adults doing, and they became addicted. I have a lot of my family were addicted. I was blessed with not being addicted to alcohol or drugs or anything like that, simply because I think from a very young age, my father had false teeth and he drank. So when he would get sick, it would be outside. We did not live in a city. We lived in the bush. So I would go out and find his teeth, wash them off so that he could have something to eat when he sobered up. Turned me quite against alcohol. So, you know what it smelt like to me. I wouldn't be near anybody who was drinking because they just smelt like vomit.
So even though you never were addicted to anything yourself,
No.
but you were deeply affected by people who
by
were addicted.
people who were, yeah.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
But it's valuable lessons that we can take and that we can impart to people.
Oh, heavens, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Everyone's experience is a valuable lesson for everyone.
Great stories and very powerful words, Elder Betty. I want to thank you so much, Chi Miigwech, for coming in here to do this podcast-style episode of the Canoe Project. And I'd like to thank everybody listening, all of our new listeners, all of our old listeners. Thank you so much for staying with us. And I hope you will join us all again on the Canoe Project for CAN, Communities, Alliances, and Networks.